A court ruling found the federal government didn't properly consult Indigenous groups. The Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion has been stuck in legal limbo. But one person is putting forward an idea that could avoid similar rulings in the future, a pipeline owned and controlled by First Nations communities. Joining me from Vancouver with more is President of Eagle Spirit Energy Holdings, Helin. Mr. Helin, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
So this pipeline you propose would see First Nations own more than 50% of the project and also give Indigenous groups control of the environmental model it follows. Now, besides those 2 points, talk to me about the big differences between the models that we've been subscribing to and failing with in the past and what your group is proposing that could see pipelines finally get built.
This project was initially led and started 6 years ago by a group of over 35 First Nations. The first order on their agenda was to put together the best model for looking after the environment in the world, and that's been done. They have a model that will bring a standard that's higher than the current proposed ocean protection plan by the federal government. They have the best port on the coast, according to a federal government study. The project shipping 2 million barrels a day would remove over 100 megatons of CO2 from the current practice of extracting oil. It leaves no tailings ponds, and it recycles the water, so it addresses all of the big criticisms of the current oil sands practices.
We know that Indigenous groups have been at the forefront of protest on a number of these different files. And we know that First Nations don't always speak with one voice. Have you been able to get everybody in the room at the same time to agree on this, or are there still outliers who oppose this project?
What's important to understand is that the common law and the protocol is that First Nations can dictate what happens in their own traditional territories. And all of the relevant First Nations along this route whose traditional territory is impacted have signed on to the project. But there always are other groups that don't agree with it. But just like Quebec, agrees to something, and Ontario may not, Ontario can't dictate to Quebec what they can do in their own province.
Lastly, when we only have a few seconds left, we know that the Northern Gateway had a projected cost of about $7 billion, and we hear that this one could cost upwards of $17. Is that cost so prohibitive that this could be, for lack of a better expression, a pipe dream?
No, the actual cost is about $12 billion, and in your introduction, you talked about lack of consultation with the TMX pipeline. This project faces the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act, which has been imposed by the federal government, and this is something that's been done without consultation. It's been challenged by the First Nation, and they will quash it. It sets a bad precedent for maritime provinces like Quebec, where the federal government seeks to impose a ban on maritime commerce on half of your coast. It really is something that should be looked at by all Canadians.
Well, Helin, it's an ambitious project, and we wish you the very best with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.